Hello, everyone. Good to see you all and be seen and heard by you all. I wanted to just give an update on what I see as kind of the big three most important and most urgent things for us to focus on from my perspective. You may have a different three or a different top five or whatever. And the whole point is let's engage in some conversation about this, both synchronously through the video conferences we participate in, but also asynchronously through various email threads that I'd like you all to consider participating in, whichever ones call out to you. So more on those email threads later. But the bottom line is we need to come together and talk about all this so that we can figure out how do we bubble to the top, whatever the priorities are, right? We're going to talk about them, and then we're ultimately going to reach some consensus. And so the big three that I'd like to put on the table just for your consideration is cooling the planet, feeding everyone, and coming together in conversation, coming together to collaborate and co-create and implement, etc., everything that we need to do. I'd like to talk about for a few minutes about how these kind of relate to each other, and then I'd like to drill down on kind of the big ones and see, okay, all right, where do we go from here, and how do we move forward on each of these three, and how do we move forward on all three holistically? So all right, so here's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I mean, first of all, we have to cool the planet, or there will be literally no more food for humans or for anyone, and there won't be any more life, so there won't be any life to come together. So we just absolutely have to cool the planet in time, and more on that in a few minutes. And then, see, if we feed everyone, that will bring us together, and we'll actually experience a profound transformation in our, feeling like a united people, because we're all feeding each other, we're all taking care of each other. And I think that togetherness actually is vital in order for us to come to actually rally around cooling the planet, because I think until we address, and this is a really big part of both togetherness and feeding everyone, which is atonement, we need to address all the harms that have been done to so many of the peoples and ecosystems of the planet. We need atonement. And I think that this atonement is really vital if we're going to achieve the kind of togetherness that we need in order to come together and rally together and cool the planet and co-create all the solutions and all the mechanisms and all the messaging and stories, engineering solutions, political solutions, financial solutions of all kinds. So, I mean, this is a major, major challenge for reasons I won't, go into the depths of right now, but we're all aware of these challenges: delusion, denial, greed, status quo, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is, to do this, we need togetherness. And to have togetherness, we need atonement. And I think the first step towards atonement is to stop the harm. Harm is ongoing to the oppressed peoples of the world. And the worst forms of this harm include hunger, starvation, malnutrition, right? So by feeding everyone, we can achieve a really solid start to a process of atonement, which must go much further and deeper. But for starters, this will get us off to a really wonderful start. That will create the perfect conditions for us to be able to come together and then achieve such great things as cooling the planet. So really, in my worldview, all three of these really go together. They're inseparable. And I'm going to focus in a minute on what do we need to do to cool the planet, what do we need to do to feed everyone. But first, let me talk briefly about what do we need to do to come together. And the way I see it, perhaps one of the most important things we can do to come together is to continue to rally around the press conference, this wonderful thing that we've all started together, and really expand this. We're working very hard right now on the systems that we need and the automation, et cetera, so that we can really expand our coverage and also get this data into places like Snack Bar, the Snack Bar menu, so that people can easily find those transformational conversations that they want to find. You see, we've got all these different transformational conversations that are happening, represented by these little dots. What we need now is networking, connections between them in order to go from this wonderful set of transformational conversations to an actual network of conversations. So all this activity centered around the press conference and Snack Bar, which hasn't been launched yet, all of this activity together is focused, and many other activities, right? Like the conversation.cc, like Good of the Whole, the Sign Network, Rebel Wisdom, Nova Sutras, so many wonderful communities that are out there having these great conversations. Now we need to get all of our communities together. So there's whole like constellations of conversations that don't have good connections between and among the different constellations. So we need to form these all forms of these connections. And that's really what, the press conference and Snack Bar and the open houses and so many other systems and platforms and tools. We just need to come up with all kinds of, systems and tools and databases and search engines and whatever is needed to get us connected, to get these different conversations to really perform more like a network. And that's, of course, we talk about this extensively on the website, thepressconference.org. But I just wanted to highlight this because this is a really key part of togetherness. And it's almost like a chicken and egg thing. Like, where do we start? One of the most important places to start is actually right here within togetherness, with the conversations that we're having and the connections that we're making here in the press conference, et cetera, so that precisely together we can actually create the solutions to feed everyone, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, as well as the solutions to cool the planet. But if I had to, really chart out the yellow brick road, here I'll do it in yellow. So if I had to map out the yellow brick road, it would look like this. We start here with togetherness, specifically the pressconference.org as kind of our main hub, really build that out, Snack Bar, et cetera, and many others, right? So we start here. The yellow brick goes like this. It starts with these. We achieve this baseline togetherness, ability to work together through that, that supports this vast, rich network of conversations. We then go straight to food, right? We feed everyone. So we're really, we're starting here with togetherness. And of course, I've got kind of more details down here, but really this is start here. Step number 1, togetherness. Step number 2, feed everyone. Step number 3, there is some very important atonement conversations that need to happen coming out of that can really bring us together and say, listen, this is something we're doing forever. And this is the beginning of a broader process of atonement where we get rid of deprivation, certainly any form of hunger, malnutrition, poverty. We attend to the basic needs. Basic needs become basic human rights. And then finally, cool the planet. Now, really, all these things need to happen in parallel, but the center of it all is really togetherness, coming together in conversation. From there, we go out and achieve things like feeding everyone, right? We go out and achieve things like cooling the planet. But we need to feed the engine of togetherness, and atonement is a crucial part. Anyway, enough of this map. I feel like I'm kind of going on and on. Okay, so having looked at the big picture of cooling the planet, feeding everyone, and togetherness, now and having looked a little bit at the details of togetherness, how do we achieve that? Now let's look at cooling the planet. So assuming a baseline of togetherness and a healthy, emerging, uh, exponentially growing network of conversations, we can then take on SRM in a systematic way. One of the most urgent things to happen right now, right away, is funding for Dr. Yetow's research at Harvard and similar groups, so that we can really hone in on exactly what are the engineering solutions that we need, so that we can then take these to market. What's the market? It's the world. It's to market SRM to the world through precise engineering solutions, right? And once we have those, and under the leadership of Dr. Yetow and others who are just amazingly competent at leading these kinds of projects, we have some really bona fide engineering solutions. We take it to the world and say, okay, we need this, and here's why. Frankly, by that stage, the here's why is just screamingly obvious. I mean, way more obvious than it is right now. I mean, it's like there's degrees of obviousness. It's like, how obvious does it need to get that we need to cool the planet immediately? And so then we enter a different phase. So as we are winning over the hearts and minds of humanity, that yes, we need to do SRM, kind of at another level, we need to really roll up our sleeves and get down to the brass tacks of planning and implementation, right? And this all has so many different facets spanning the engineering, the political, local governments, national governments, geopolitics, international agreements, funding, manufacturing, logistics, civil engineering, ocean engineering. There's so many different facets of this: computer modeling, real-time feedback, data analysis, et cetera, optimization. So many facets that need to all work together. We really depend upon the exponential growth of togetherness and the collective superintelligence coming out of togetherness, as we talk about extensively on the press conference and Radish, et cetera. And from planning, we proceed right on to implementation, and we just get it done. That's the story of SRM, and it totally depends upon togetherness, which in turn totally depends upon feeding everyone, the first step of atonement. And on the topic of feeding everyone, let me share with you some images about this. Okay, these images come from a presentation I did for Food Healers of Whidbey Island, which I have the privilege of leading. And Whidbey Island is where I live. We want to feed everyone on Whidbey Island, make this kind of both a test case and a showcase, centered around 100% plant-based, very nutritious and delicious stews of different varieties. We'll be able to source the ingredients both locally grown, which is definitely the preference, but also, things that aren't grown here, like say lentils and varieties of rice and wheat, et cetera. We will source from wherever we need. And the prices are incredibly economical. So lentils, which might cost a couple bucks a pound at the supermarket, when you buy them in bulk straight from the source, the farmer, it gets down to around 6.5 cents a pound. So incredibly economical. So we buy large quantities of these raw material inputs, ingredients. We cook them like these are machinery of industrial rice cookers for feeding like entire armies and whatnot, continuous cookers in this case. But we mass produce the stew, these different plant-based stews. We transport them cold. So we have the technology through like milk trucks, for example, to transport, in this case, stew cold. We want to transport it cold so the bacteria doesn't grow, so that it arrives fresh. And then the idea is that people heat it up at their homes, right? But imagine that we delivered it in some space age looking, which is now a reality with the Tesla truck and these super cool trailers and all this. Um, Partly for efficiency, of course, but also partly for marketing, right? Imagine that the message here is, food from the future, right? But it's really also food for the future. It's food so that we can stop destroying the Amazon and other rainforests and other ecosystems for producing meat and dairy, right? And this is all part of a conversation we need to have. In order to do this on Whidbey Island, we need to have a conversation. So we're having conversations about this with increasing frequency and intensity. And that's really where it all starts, which is kind of the baseline starting point for anything that we're going to do. It all starts with a conversation. So again, to review briefly, we want to mass produce this one super healthy immune boosting plant-based stews paired with, fresh bread or tortillas or rice, depending upon where in the world we're delivering the food. And, same goes for the stew itself. So, but produce appropriate varieties of, stew and accompanying, bread or bread-like carbohydrates. Green smoothies as well would be a great addition. And of course, we keep on adding to the menu. But let's start with the basics, right? Source locally, source where we need to, very economically, in large quantities, produce in very large quantities, deliver it in large quantities, cold, deliver it to everyone. And let's get it on, food for the future. And a conversation. See, something like this would really help us to market it. And that's super important because we want to deliver the food to everyone. And we don't want there to be stigma associated with it. As we do this and it becomes a huge story, people will jump in and support. People will jump in and donate, contribute, fund it, volunteer, etc. We need all the above. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm proposing that we focus on is feeding everyone, coming together and cooling the planet. And anyway, jump in the conversation and also let us know if you want to be part of a specific email group and what kind of topics you want to jump into, because we need to keep this going asynchronously through email, synchronously through Zoom video conferencing, and other means as well. So jump in if you haven't already. And if you have, thank you. And invite everyone you can, because we need all hands on deck now. We've got to cool the planet. We've got to feed everyone, and we've got to come together in conversation and in the critical projects and missions that we need to take on to save, heal, and transform life on Earth. Thank you all so much for listening to this update. Love you all and see you all soon. Thanks.